Okay, so it turns out that having an isekai where some highly educated dude turns a more realistic backwater kingdom into an industrial powerhouse while being cognizant of systemic aspects like logistics and political maneuvering makes for a really interesting premise. Not that power scaling or farming in an outlandish fantasy world can't be really fun to watch, but sometimes you want something that's more grounded and thus really scratches that part of your brain that's like, what if an engineer went back into medieval times to create guns and steam engines? And not the part that's like, what if you gave a caveman a bag of hot Cheetos and a hentai magazine? And a Glock for good measure. Not to say that there isn't some nonsensical magic going on. The show is called Release That Witch after all. But the story is far more interested in how magic could be utilized to develop a country's infrastructure and how frustrating prejudices hold back substantial material progress for society. Who would have thought that if witches and powerful magic were actually real, that you waste a ton of potential burning them at the stake? And that's a cold, pragmatic way of looking at it. Killing someone for fallacious reasons in general is horrendous vibes and big sad, regardless of if that someone has extraordinary capabilities. Not trying to imply that it's alright to execute witches in front of a live audience if they're not useful. Anyways, Release That Witch follows Roland Wimbledon, who's basically a fail-son prince. Like, I'm pretty sure he's around 4th in line and mismanages the worst, tiniest spot by lounging around all day while his people are heavily exploited yet still starve. Except in classic isekai fashion, suddenly big brain dude, who happens to be Chinese, suddenly takes over his body and says, well, I guess this is my life now, and decides to do the best he can. Turns out that involves turning against the church by using science to materially improve the lives of his subjects. And right off the bat, he does the based and humane thing of going out there and saving witches. This isekai dude straight up shows up out of nowhere, throwing hands, systemically, with the baddest op of all, God. Nah, just kidding. This isn't a JRPG, so no killing God today. We're just fighting the church out here with woke ideas like paying people a living wage, giving out free food during winter, not killing magical women, and overall just being competent because of the expanded knowledge base from being curious and scientific. Man, only anime can make a dude reading financial reports somehow entertaining. Actually, not true. Mom Donnie balancing the budget, also hype as hell. I was geeking the hell out, yelling, that's my mayor! And I don't even live in New York City. But seriously, the MC constantly talks to characters about their wages. It's actually hilarious how equitable he's trying to be because of how out of place it feels for a magical anime and for the time period. And you know what? People are so down for that. Witches, stonemasons, militias, doesn't matter who, if they can do the job, they get paid well, and MC always upfront makes monetary offers. Sometimes even out of his own personal treasury, not just the state's money. Seriously, the crowd goes wild just because Big W Wimbledon is screaming about how everyone's getting an extra egg for dinner if they do their boot camp training well. I know on isekais everyone's usually falling over the MC like they're emitting pheromones or something, but this time I can excuse this because this isn't like some socially repulsive solo chud randomly turned aura farmer that somehow pulls en masse. This MC is the goddamn man in charge of his province. Everyone already knows him, so if he enacts policies that benefit the people, of course they're gonna love him. What a novel thought, huh? Treat your workers well and they actually care about the work they're doing and want to get invested in the well-being of a broader state of affairs beyond just selfish interests. Today's trillionaire and billionaires and name-only kings in practice could learn a thing or two about that. Can't even think of the last time I heard of a story involving a CEO using their own wealth to shore up a deficit besides like the Nintendo CEO back when the Wii U underperformed. And that was like 12 years ago. Instead, we're in this stupid financialization meta where money isn't made with material goods and services anymore, and the real way to make money is just already have a ton of abstract wealth like stocks and use them as leverage to take out loans. But then to pay off those loans, they can just take bigger loans down the line because their assets appreciated. So like they're incentivized to never ever sell their assets, which trigger capital gains tax because it's all about hoarding and ballooning exponentially to outpace their debt, so they never actually want to spend their own money. Which means if anything goes wrong in a company, whatever, just lay off like 20% of the workforce. The concept of generational institutionalized experience within a company is a dead thing nowadays, and this obviously causes everyone in the system, top or bottom, to be loyal to nothing but the highest dollar sign. But enough about your regular reminder that we're ruled by Epsteinite pedophiles that systemically siphon society's wealth at exponential rates without recirculating it into the economy since it's all just sitting in their portfolios appreciating. Release That Witch is ultimately a show where we get to be greatly entertained by the way characters react as Wimbledon moves society forward from feudalism into something that's currently in the show, sort of like industrialized mercantilism, by working together with magical girls and open-minded fellows in their various professions. It's an excellent reminder of the satisfaction of progress towards a clearly envisioned better future, because I'm of the opinion that dooming over societal issues by acknowledging but never working towards solutions is actually deeply bad for your soul. Like, I was getting such good vibes from the show right off the bat because first 2 episodes, immediately after saving our first witch Anna, she's not actually truly saved until her heart and convictions are realigned. Her power is pyromancy, so we're going the classic trope of a greatly destructive power that has its owner becoming incredibly self-loathing from hurting those around them. Anna, at the time of her capture, basically has nothing. And she got caught because her own father sold her out as a witch right after she saved his life by incinerating a mugger. And when the MC first meets her, she's begging to die. Then immediately after her freedom, she's still actively asking to die, feeling guilty of having killed someone and seeing herself as an evil force of destruction. Now, hilariously enough, the first assurance Wimbledon gives her is an incredibly well-paying equitable employment contract, which I'm sure for a shell-shocked girl gives extremely what the f is happening right now vibes, and could, from her perspective, I'm sure could easily be read as, oh, I guess the prince wants a concubine. Which, by the way, the show does joke about later. There's actually well-done medieval times dark comedy here, because the master stonemason assumes Wimbledon is saving witches to build a harem. Which, honestly, a reasonable guess given the setting, but hilariously messed up considering one of the witches we meet is an actual child. Anyways, it's only after Wimbledon and Anna actually talk it out in a Game of Thrones-esque garden walk that he gets her to open up about her dream of teaching kids to read and write that she's all but given up on account of being a witch. So, MC does this thing where he hands her a flower and then lies that it's poisonous. So she freaks out and drops it. Then he uses that as an example of how she treated the flower differently based on perception, despite the flower itself never actually changing. It just simply was as it is, but was ascribed features from another. He compares that to how society sees witches, but Anna's still dooming and says that's naive, people will change. To which the prince is like, well, nothing is gonna change unless we try and change things, and I want your help to build a world where witches can live free. And I'm going like, yes, that's what I'm talking about, that's what it's all about. Me and my homies hate doomerism. But yeah, Anna's change of heart is awesome to see because it's so stark. There are so many people out there who are in depressive ruts with long abandoned hopes and dreams. And Anna's character is one of those obvious but still meaningful reminders that when there's a will and a way, suddenly one can focus on what they want with so much purpose and clarity. It's not a character arc where they sullenly linger and fall over and over again because they don't know what they want or even how to get there. This is a clear-cut, valid goal, only without the know-how and gumption to get there. So because MC with his Isekai persona can lay out clear, actionable plans utilizing her fire powers, she's gotten way more than a hefty paycheck, but also the gift of conviction to fuel a newfound determination to use her powers to help people and show the world that witches aren't to be feared. Wimbledon makes it very clear what must be done. She must learn to control her powers and use them to help him create technological marvels to better his people's lives. She's not ontologically evil, she simply is. Just like how in nature, our world is full of its own massively powerful occurrences that can be dangerous if misunderstood, but unfathomably beneficial if responsibly harnessed. Personally speaking, I'm a big fan of that giant thermonuclear reactor up in the sky that provides an incredibly consistent energy source that's so much more efficient than constantly digging up oil that's burned up and expended completely, so you gotta drill more, but big ol' sun, it's always up there. Shame that it's hard to exploitatively monetize solar, so it gets slandered in our era of endless subscriptions and planned obsolescence. The Church of Oil lies to us. At least that witch is full of that classic isekai satisfaction of seeing characters getting clowned on by an MC because of their elevated perspective. But here that satisfaction is so much more interesting due to how Wimbledon facts and logics these fools and truly inspires and elevates everyone in his close circle. The Anna example is like the most profound, but Wimbledon's closest advisor Barov and his chief knight Carter are also both deeply moved by MC's ideas and motivations. What I really like about Barov and Carter are how they seem to represent the two differing perspectives of intelligence versus faith, and how their pitfalls have been circumvented by MC's presence. Barov at the beginning is someone who is begrudgingly assigned as Wimbledon's aide, where he's well aware of the intricacies of the world and how the church truly controls everything. I mean, prior to the MC being isekai, Barov gets to see clear as day that he's the one truly managing the old incompetent Wimbledon's principality. The prince just being a facade, a name for legitimacy, not competency, just like how the church truly rules while kings are their facade. Barov is someone who, burdened by the knowledge of societal intricacies due to his managing of finances and logistics, acknowledges the limitations of what he can achieve. He is resigned to adopting an "it is what it is" attitude, serving this inept prince with the promise of eventually being transferred to being the official minister of finance for the king himself. He is that archetype of person who's well educated, aspires for something lofty, but is barred by asinine power dynamics, aka politics, and is okay with accepting that he's in a pretty comfortable position in life and just does his job competently. Barov reminds me of friends I know in STEM fields who complain about their company's bad decisions. Because I've heard stories about Intel not jumping on smartphones and instead focusing on laptops like MacBooks, or Neuralinks focusing on more trying to change the biology to suit the technology instead of the other way around. Yet they can't do anything about it, and so have to settle with just being okay with having a good job despite a lack of faith in their own work. When confronted with a vast dilemma that you're well aware of while reaching the conclusion that you can't really do anything about it, that curse of knowledge constrains thinking of new possibilities, grounded in reality by what's presently understood. Suddenly, the new Wimbledon passionately speaks of how he's going to better the lives of his people and exactly how he's going to do it, detailing how this is going to require something as grand as dismantling the church's power structures. Barov's worldview becomes realigned because with the new ethos comes entirely new logic pathways, despite the fact that he was initially convinced by sound reasoning in the first place, given that he wouldn't throw his lot in with any movement unless it seemed sensible to him. His dry yet likely correctly concluded expectations of the future suddenly become excitingly unknown once more, and he can again experience interesting possibilities that come with not knowing what comes next. And like any curious mind, he has to know what will happen. And so he's going to stick around diligently running the numbers for his one true king, Wimbledon. His faith now behind this powerful vision of prosperity for mankind and Wimbledon's play for the throne to make this realized. Meanwhile, Carter, faith-pilled as he is, has a certain naivety to the world from his lack of knowledge. He very much is like a lawful good platonic ideal of a Chad knight. Not the brightest, but definitely a dude who believes in knightly ideals and helping people out. Fiercely loyal to his highness and the world's existing hierarchies. Which also means he's racist, but we do love space for character growth, am I right? Carter, as chief knight, is in essence Wimbledon's alpha henchgoon. So he's constantly following the prince around as security and as general odd job muscle guy, so if the MC needs something to get done, like fetching something from town, these tasks get delegated to Carter and his underlings. The prince does get better at knowing what to ask Carter to do as the show progresses, because initially he overestimates the ease of efficacy that comes with technological leaps. For instance, MC invents cement with the help of Anna's pyromancy and figures that he can have Carter overlook the construction of a wall to keep out these demon beasts that show up during the winter, but yeah, still gotta have some engineering expertise because Carter's spectacularly sold. This is where the aforementioned stonemason comes in, but I digress. Point is, Carter swings sword good and commands with martial prowess. As a result, there's a lot of funny scenes where Carter's questioning the MC, going like, "What do we need this for?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it," before imparting some knowledge to the knight. But as a result of all these factual nuggets making him realize there's so much to reality's nuances that he doesn't know, with the topping of his knightly code not coming through when he asks for fellow knightly aid against demon beasts that gets blocked by a noble. And Carter gets these moments where his faith in chivalry falters. When a knight who's been training for so many years suddenly sees the power of a musket and a steam engine, these are ultimate manifestations of accrued knowledge, utilizing these seemingly insignificant factoids and producing something revolutionary from them. Carter's forced to question his usefulness and wonders if there's even a point to knights and if they can just be replaced by superior technology. But MC reminds Carter that the mindset of a knight, all their ideals and what they fight for, aren't made obsolete. Because chivalrous ideas don't need a knight on horseback. It could very well be a knight with a gun on a steam train. It makes me think of classic technological determinism criticisms where one might think that technology is the determining factor for culture, but in reality it's this deeply interwoven and much less simplistic relationship. After all, when something is invented, the underlying mindset motivating its creation was to envision a use case, a need that was informed by society and what was desired at that time. If you want to go around fighting monsters and saving people as a knight in shining armor, a gun doesn't change that premise, just its actionable nuances. On the flip side, if you want to go around killing witches because you deluded yourself into thinking that's a good thing, those not chill thoughts might lead to you inventing deranged torture devices instead of, I don't know, something actually useful, like what someone who's genuinely trying to help society would create. Point is, the why and the how are both very important to consider, and it's cool to see the different ends of those spectrums represented via Barov and Carter. Barov gets to do the how towards a much more inspiring why, and Carter learns a ton more about the how to solidify instead of devaluing his why. Can't wait for some inevitably super hype scene down the line where Carter triumphs by doing something clever during a fight scene. Which, speaking of the fights, you're not going to see anything mind-blowingly over-animated like something from Demon Slayer or Chainsaw Man movies, but as someone who's watched at this point probably a couple hundred hours of HEMA YouTubers like Skalagrim, as far as I'm aware with my YouTube tourism into historical European martial arts, Released at Witch seems like it has pretty realistic equipment and movements. Characters don't do anything overly flashy by flying and spinning around, it's all stuff within the realm of possibility and well-trained, as weapons are kept in positions that I'm pretty sure intentionally close off lines of attack. Not trying to say that realism is always better, again, outlandish anime powers are awesome, but given Released at Witch's more gritty and down-to-earth tone, it works really well here and gives the witches that much more impact when they step in.
Invisible women out to kill ya? Oh, great.
We love hooded baddies, don't we, folks? We gotta normalize women wearing cloaks like Melina from Elden Ring. My god, that fit is tough. Feisty bit. Witches get the best drip. We could all learn a thing or two from them. But yeah, I love seeing the gambesons. At least I think that's what those are. If it's some different leather/cloth armor, forgive me, I am no expert. We got chainmail hooded guards too, which is notable because the fact that not everyone has a full suit of armor gives more weight to armor as actually being the expensive and tanky big deal that it should be when a knight actually has it. Which, by the way, I find it extremely amusing that Carter decides to go through the trouble of suiting up when Wimbledon has him test out a musket. Like, they don't ever show him putting it on, but my understanding is that knight armor is kind of a pain to get on and only something to wear for decorum or actual usage, like training or combat. So it's just a fun aspect of this scene to imagine. Man, I just love how relentlessly pro-science this show is. Like, anytime the MC is on screen showcasing tech, he's taking the opportunity to also yap about both the why and how behind technology. It oftentimes just boils down to him teaching either Carter or the girls, or both at the same time, to be curious and observe the world around them and to reason their way to conclusions instead of just assuming everything or being told something is correct without confirming. And as stupid and basic as this might seem, I deeply respect it and how much the show advocates for literacy when we are currently in a confounding age of regression where mass misinformation, AI, and short-form content is fueling anti-intellectualism and a newfound wave of illiteracy where people's media and reading comprehension have been notably dipping. My media diet nowadays has definitely seen its fair share of teachers lamenting over kids not being able to read, or college students having their reading assignments cut substantially because it's not the default for people to be willing or even capable of reading longer works anymore. It personally feels really bizarre for my college graduation to be the last plane out of Saigon because the year right after was COVID, and it seems like it's all been downhill from there. Lamenting aside, my main worries/criticisms of Release the Witch are that it seems overly focused on highlighting the virtues of merchants and their competence, and that it could use more scenes of the girls talking amongst themselves. Though these aren't like clear-cut issues, because I understand that contextually mercantilism is probably going to be better power structure-wise for elevating more people that aren't just the nobility and the church. So like, it's still increasing the quality of life for society and is thus woke for their time, even though it's not as progressive as contemporary times. Look, Dark Ages feudalism sounds god-awful with its religious fanaticism and theocracy going on, and the show does showcase those in power just clowning on their merchant financial advisors, like Petrov, despite them being shown as more reasonable and competent with pursuing win-win ideals via trade. Because yeah, even though the show does have the MC doing his best by the people, the power structures existing do not incentivize that behavior, and so just because a benevolent ruler happens to be on the throne isn't exactly the best assurance that this will systemically work out if it weren't for MC. I get that he has to navigate feudal times and use its structures to make his plays, and that's what makes this all so intriguing, so I only hope that as the show continues to go on and as society rapidly modernizes, that power structures will continue to flatten. Obviously, they can't get absolutely egalitarian or anything, since exceptional individuals exist and all. Like, witches are a thing who will hold more power in society because they're, for all intents and purposes, superheroes. But you know what type of more horizontal power structure I'd like to see? Democratize everything. Employees should be able to vote for their management and payment, just like how citizens vote for their representatives and ballot measures. Because without both, workers in practice don't get a say in the control of their labor, which in turn gives them less material power to have a say in governance. That's really getting ahead of everything though. It's honestly good enough that rather than focusing on the how like that, the why of simply hoping and wanting and actualizing for a better future is the actual first step. And the mindset that prompts that way of thinking is absolutely fronted in Release That Witch. Gotta take reasonably actionable steps out of feudalism, right? Going into mercantilism and its likely trajectory into laissez-faire capitalism is, reminder, still a jump in more people's quality of life. It's just that nowadays we gotta do the hard work of envisioning the hard to imagine how of what's better for everyone to get out of our surveillance advertising oligarchy capitalism that has effectively dismantled any sense of a functional democracy. And the mindset showcased in the show still applies to today's struggles if we want to see any real change. As for Release That Witch's score on the Bechdel test, I can give it a bit of leeway since this is a setting where women unfortunately aren't typically holding top tier positions of power, and with so much of a focus on the logistics and kingdom building going on, the witches are usually presented in relation to Wimbledon and his plans, which utilize their magic rather than the witches acting as their own driving force. Maybe this will come about later because right now there's mention of the Witch Cooperation Association, but so far they've only sent one member, the shadow rogue baddie called Nightingale. But at the moment, she's basically just following along with the prince out of aligned interest for the well-being of witches. I forget if there's a name for this specific type of dynamic, but it's giving when there's a man in an authority position who's taking the credit for a woman who's actually doing the work. But they are both understanding of the situation and know that they need the legitimacy society grants the man if they want to get anything done. Just doesn't have to be a woman, it can also be Ratatouille. Though with Release That Witch, it's not that Wimbledon is incompetent, he just don't got no magic. Which does make for interesting perceptions because everyone is stunned by his out-of-this-world scientific prowess. So I suppose it tracks that no one would question how he's doing all this, and so people don't have a reason to assume that he's actually employing witches. And it's also cool how the cat gets let out of the bag, because the prince does admit that people were gonna find out sooner or later. And it's thoughtful in that he makes sure it's known that he's working with this small cinnamon roll Nana who has miraculous healer powers. Because it's way better optics than, I don't know, having Nightingale be revealed after she captures some high-profile scoundrels with ties to hostile rulers that were sent to burn their food supplies. Because it's essentially a foregone conclusion that MC has to execute them since they saw her, though I'm sure he would have loved to have them killed regardless for trying to starve his people. But even if Wimbledon wanted to do something like let these saboteurs go in exchange for a chest of gold that can be used to further develop his plans, instead he has to do some pretext proclamation that these thugs were actually assassins on top of saboteurs, acting of their own volition and must be hung in public. Super hype power move to burn one political bridge, but also gain even more favor from his people by telling them we killing guys who are out here for your food. So yeah, point is that them witches gotta stay hidden, and there's less opportunity for them to talk to each other and be their own autonomous agents. In fact, the only conversation I think I can remember between only the girls being present that's over real talk is on the last episode we have so far. 8, where Nightingale and Anna are arguing over what it means for witches to be free in a world where they face so much suffering and persecution. Some real, I know why the caged bird sings type of conversation that I would love to see more of. More reminders that the girlies aren't a monolith and have different ideas of what their freedom means. Because even if Anna never leaves the castle, she feels that she has found her new home safe and sound. All while her life is incredibly fulfilling, using her powers to help the world by learning how to engineer for the MC. That'll be it from me. Please give Release That Witch a watch because it needs all the support it can get. Apparently there are supposed to be more episodes, but due to decisions made by higher-ups, we might not ever get to see them because the reasoning is that this show is not lighthearted, colorful, cutesy anime girl enough like its comic version. From comments I've read, it seems like the anime takes more closely to the darker tone of the original web novel. Now, I've only watched the show, but ain't no way in hell should this show start looking like Genshin Impact, because I feel that would greatly detract from the grounded tone presented here that makes these technological triumphs presented have so much more weight. And we'd also lose out on depictions like brown people and an actually fat Giga Chad who's Nana's dad. This dude is how I'd imagine Robert Baratheon would be if he was actually a good person who's still rambunctious but takes a page out of Becky Blackbell's dad from Spy X Family. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and here's hoping that we get a season 2 of Release That Witch tone intact.